As we saw earlier, when we discussed the workflow of the who's, and then we discussed the workflow of the what's, let's talk a little bit about the how's. Remember, everything we do within NAV ENWIS is based around our services that we provide. Those services and the rules of how we're supposed to engage with a customer, a vendor, or a business partner is defined within a contract. Let's close the lines for a moment and go through the other components of what makes up a contract. Remember, a contract defines the relationship that we have with our business partners. I'm going to use the word business partner because it can be either customer or vendor. It defines both the monetary issues, either APAR. It defines the rules of profit sharing, rentals. It defines the rules of how we're supposed to bill this customer. Everything is defined within our contract. The contract can be either assigned to a global customer and then have each line assigned to a specific task. A contract can be assigned to a specific task site. And when I say task, I mean task site or location. Can be assigned to a specific task site for that specific one, so that you can track all of the material streams either as one contract or as separate contracts with different conditions. In this particular example where I'm looking at Best Buy has our general tab, which you should be familiar with, very similar, tracking of who we're supposed to be doing business with. It tells us the location. In this particular case, we've assigned this contract to a specific task site that happens to be in Baltimore, Maryland. This particular contract, I'm going to skip the lines and we're going to go to conditions. There are conditions in reference to this particular contract, a starting date, an expiration date. There may be an external document number, such as a PO. We may have this contract be independent or dependent on material going in or out. An example of this is if you have a pricing method that the first 10 tons of material that you service are at one price, and anything above that is at another price. That becomes a dependent contract tracked on a monthly basis. There are also times where we have an independent or dependent contract from a brokerage agreement or from a downstream standpoint, where you have promised a particular customer downstream that you will deliver an X amount of material. And if you do, it's at this price. If you deliver underneath it, it's at another price. So we make that either dependent or independent. We do track distances and driving. It helps us in reference to our planning side, as well as the posting groups from an accounting perspective. Currencies, since multi-currencies are available, are all tracked within this group. Let's go into lines. Lines, a contract. There is a lot to a contract. A contract has a lot of information that we're trying to track in reference to this service or this relationship. In this particular one, we set up 3 subcontracts under our contract. One subcontract has to do with roll-off trucking, where we are providing a service to a specific task site. Remember, we talked about the task site. Since it was already designated here, we didn't have to say it again. But if we didn't assign a task site, at this particular point, we would assign a task site where they are paying us $200 for the service, and we are negatively adjusting AR by $20. Subsequently, in this particular service, we are also buying roll-off trucking from another vendor, in this case RD Transportation. We're not using our own fleet. The idea is that everything that's involved with this relationship from a monetary standpoint should be on the same contract. Whatever you buy and whatever you sell, the entire relationship should be right here. The reason we try to keep it all together is so we can determine profitability on a contract by contract basis. Now, if you look at the second example, of a subcontract where we're providing roll-off trucking to a specific site. This particular case, we are going to be using the Best Buy vendor, in this case Best Buy. Remember, we talked about having that dual relation with business partner, but we're paying them $20 a ton. So whenever this occurs, for this material stream, we're saying I want to cut a check for $20 for each ton. But everything in this material stream, we are going to negatively adjust AR. It depends on how you want to set up each particular scenario. And then let's go across so we can take a better look at everything we're going to be providing. In this particular case, we're going to be going across the screen where we define. Now, pricing, like everything else, you can define pricing, as we mentioned earlier in one of our earlier videos, by lots of different things. When you change pricing, you have up to 25 different components that can make up a price related to different things. They could be related to equipment, services, quality, currency. There are lots of different components that can make up a price. This is just a few on this particular screen. Now, you also have the ability to track pricing over time. So as pricing changes, and in this particular case, I don't have an example. Let's use this one. Let's see if I have something there. Nothing, but to give you an idea, I can track pricing over time of how it's gone up or gone down, if there's an escalation of 2% and when it's supposed to start. This also affects our commodity pricing. So if our rebates or our sales price downstreams are directly related to commodity pricing, we're able to track commodity pricing changes over time on a month-by-month, deal-by-deal basis so that we can look at that over time. As we look at pricing, we can make it fixed, meaning it doesn't matter what happens in the general system, this price is always this until it expires. In this particular case, the material code that we assigned was commercial single stream. We have a piece of equipment, which is an open top 30-yard container that's going out. We have which site it's supposed to be located at. We're locating it at the Rockville site. Remember, I have the ability to, you may have multiple pieces of equipment at the same site, but at different spots within that site. And those site locations need to be tracked. Where I say facility code, right underneath this, where it says when this material arrives here, I want you to make sure it arrives to a specific facility. And in this case, I'm delivering it to vendor RABC. Of course, we can assign, there may be external documents. We may have route plans that we're assigning to this. In this particular case, if I look at the cycle code for this roll-off is every other Friday. When's this next cycle date, meaning when is the next day we're supposed to provide service? In what time do they want? Do they like evenings, mornings, and so on? So we can give that as part of our description for defining those specific routes. All of this information eventually flows to dispatch operations and to the scale house, and finally to accounting, so that they're able to know what to do with each order that's created from this contract. As we originally saw within our order, everything becomes an order. Either from the scale house, we create an order, from a contract, we create an order, or from a quote, we create an order. Everything flows into orders so that those orders workflow are then managed dependent on the type of service we are providing. Now, this is just a sample of just some of the columns that we have available. There are many, many others which are also available, from quality, lump sum, material groups. We may have other types of information we're wanting to track. The list goes on depending on what we need. And if it's not on the list, of course, we can add it. This should give you an idea of what a contract looks like in reference to how do we manage all of this. This is just the starting point. In our next video, we'll talk about how we take an order from a contract and move it through its process from dispatch into receiving at the scale house.